Tell me what you see when you look at me. Do you see another brother lost in these streets looking for his soul?
Trying to find my soul.
Or do you see another brother searching for lost souls in these streets? A street soldier.
Street soldier.
Here to help you get that chip off your shoulder, warm your colder days and sober your drunken ways, and find a way to help you get over these hurdles placed in our path. And this is not meant to amuse you. This is for all those who have questions but are afraid to ask.
I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. No. When times get hard, you lose your way. Open your mind and hear what I say.
This is a message for the hard and the soft. To those who tune in weekly and to those who keep an eye out for 8 p.m. on Sundays and turn their radios off. The truth hurts. The cloth has been pulled. We're walking around half dead. Use this show as your IV. Alive and Free is a new movement. We've achieved self-destruction. A street soldier promotes self-improvement.
Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah. Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah.
I have less than $1,000 income. So you build affordable housing and the rent is over $800. Well, how is that affordable? So we need to really have a conversation about what's affordable.
Yeah.
Okay?
Seniors are the fastest growing population segment, yet they receive the least amount of attention. And seniors vote, so that's why we're here today. By 2030, as the baby boomer generation reaches retirement age, California's over 65 population is expected to nearly double to 8.4 million. In Contra Costa County, it's estimated that about 20% of the population will be 65 or older.
The market is such, and I've heard this from a number of realtors when I say, how do we address the affordable housing challenge? And they say, well, the market will bear the 2-bedroom apartment at $1,600, or even worse. In one of the cities I represent, people are buying homes for $800,000 in cash. I don't know about you, but I don't know nobody who can buy a home for $800,000 in cash. And so that means that without government intervention to ensure that working people, that retired people, that young people can live in our communities, we won't be able to do so.
I live in a house that's behind Davis Park, and I'm in a flood zone. And between my flood insurance and my property taxes, I'm being kicked out of my house, basically. So what I negotiated, I refunded financed my house a few years ago and got my payments down to $600 a month. I'm living on $1,400, and in the last 2 years, my house payments have gone up $300. So I am desperate to resolve this issue.
I am dealing with a serious issue of affordable housing. I'm on a very fixed income, less than $1,000 a month. And the city of Richmond is building on Harbor Way affordable housing, but it's $800 a month. And we're dealing with an issue of, you get affordable housing, but is it really affordable when you barely make $800 a month, or you barely have that as income?
My house got appraised at $200,000, but I could never sell my house at that rate. It's people come in and buy the houses dirt cheap, they fix them up and sell them, and that's what's driving the housing prices up. And so that's consequently my property taxes are going up as a result of that too, and it's a problem.
And a lot of people, we were blindsided. We did not see this serious housing issue coming at us. I've never been in a situation like this in my entire life. I've always had beautiful places to live. I can always afford them. It is dehumanizing. It is distressing. It is very stressful.
Once you get into affordable housing, then the rent is raised every year. So now you still, and then the increase you get in Social Security or SSI, it doesn't keep up.
The largest growing demographic and population in our country, in our state, and in our county are seniors. And we're going to try to have to figure out, because we're all living longer, how to continue having seniors live productive lives in their own communities. And eventually to age, what we call age in place.
Being affordable and yet not being a safe environment is an important thing. There is some housing in Richmond for seniors that the seniors have been coupled with young, disabled, addicted people that they have to live in the same housing environment and have to be in the house before 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock to feel safe coming in.
No senior building I've visited has any kind of security, whether it's on the police patrol level. We actually had people in the building to monitor who comes and goes. Now that's an issue where I live. I live in El Patel Gardens, and homeless people have been known to come in and sleep in the stairwells and hallways, which, like the lady said earlier, I'm in the house shut down before dark, and then lets my daughter or some of my young friends bring me and take me. They got to escort me to the door because I don't feel safe in there, because anybody, and we're vulnerable. We're a vulnerable community.
Wow, great piece. Great piece. How did that come up for you?
Well, I was out there with Ann. Ann did actually most of those interviews, so thank you, Ms. Bissett, for your great work. There was a congressman, the county supervisor, and Tony Thurman, State Assembly.
Yeah.
Had a town hall meeting in San Pablo to talk to seniors about senior issues. And there was a lot of issues that came up. Transportation was one. I'm leaving something else. But housing was the big one. That was, I mean, you heard the interviews. I mean, and it was something. I mean, look, we all know the Bay Area is an expensive place to live, and rents are going up all the time.
Yeah.
But it didn't dawn on me the particular plight of seniors. They are on fixed incomes. It's not like they're gonna go out and get a new job and earn more money. And so just hearing the stories and the struggles that they're going through struck both of us. And, I think you heard for yourself. It's a real issue going on out there for seniors.
Were there any solutions, any answers forthcoming out of that, or is it just the beginning of, hopefully, them trying to remedy some of their concerns?
Solutions in the short term? I don't think so. Okay. There was ideas. Some kind of parcel tax, maybe getting something on the ballot, some kind of state tax that could go to building new low-income affordable housing. But people are trying to do that, but it hasn't got on the ballot. So it'd have to get on the ballot for it first, and then people would have to vote for it. So short term, no, I didn't hear any solutions. I heard a lot of people struggling.
Yeah, great work. And there's this. How can I say this? This really hits you. It should hit you anyway, but it really hits you when it's a relative of yours that, you're on it, but, we're all related, we're our family. So for us, everybody, we feel it for everyone. And, that's that issue of affordable housing, in particular senior housing, is happening everywhere, not just in Contra Costa County, but also in the city of San Francisco. And I guess I want to sort of frame it in the whole issue of gentrification, which is going on everywhere, as the soul said right before we went to the break, whether it's the city of San Francisco or the city of Oakland or the city of St. Louis or the city of, Richmond. Pick any particular urban area, gentrification is occurring. Now, they don't necessarily call it gentrification. Many times the word redevelopment is used. But what it comes down to is the neighborhood is changing. And that's a huge concern generally for, even though folks may have the best of intentions, what normally happens in, quote, redevelopment, which is gentrification, is that the population that has lived there for a long time, and I've seen this actually happen, because let me just give you a quick example. Population that has lived for a long time, after the redevelopment is done, and in many cases that involves tearing down public housing. A lot of the projects that a lot of the folks have lived in are torn down, rebuilt, new housing. Sometimes very, very, I mean, depending on how you look at it, nice housing, but certainly better than what they were in before. What comes down is that, and as those units are torn down, you look down the road 10 years after that begins, or 20 years after it begins, the folks who lived there before in the housing or even lived in that area, and I'm thinking particularly of the Fillmore area in San Francisco, where this happened roughly in maybe the late 70s. I don't know exactly when. I remember when I got up here, the Mo was the Mo, and you knew I was the Mo because you knew who lived there. Well, it underwent redevelopment, it underwent gentrification, and now that place don't look nothing like it did when used to, and specifically I'm talking about African Americans. That was the spot, one of the spots in the city for African Americans. It's not that way anymore. Similar thing is now happening out in Bayview Hunters Point, and as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of West Oakland. I mean, West Oakland. You know, the black population in Oakland when I got here, and that was a while ago, when I come to college, was 46%. 46%. That's about half of Oakland was black. I'm going to say now, and this might be high, it's probably 25%. They're gone. Now, where they're gone is, we can talk about that and why they left and nothing, but they are gone. The black population in the city of San Francisco when I got here was about 14%. It is now, depending on what census you listen to, who you're talking to, 6%. I've heard 5%. I've heard as low as 3.9%. And the last neighborhood that has traditionally been a black area, Bayview Hunters Point, is now undergoing redevelopment / gentrification. And when this started, there was a huge fear of the residents of the Bayview that, I know, Hunters View needs to come down, and Double Rock needs to come down, and the housing in Potrero Hill, it needs to change. But is everything about this? Is the whole flavor of the neighborhood? When I say flavor, I mean color of the neighborhood going to change? So I've actually been involved in a little bit of this, and I call it gentrification done right, because it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Change is going to come. It depends on how much change. And I got my first case study, and we want to bring some folks in tonight to talk about it. And it also dovetails with what the story that the soldiers just had on the air around senior housing. So I want to bring to the phones a couple of folks who are involved in this process. It's around senior housing. You might call it crisis in senior housing. I want to bring to the phones Kathy Davis and Felicia Thibodeau. Welcome to Street Soldiers, both of you. Thanks for coming on to sort of get the word about what's going on out there. Both Kathy and Felicia, thank you for coming on the air. Say hello to everybody.
Hi.
Hello. I want you to just hang on to hear the story about what's going on in Contra Costa, because I think it would give folks you're actually dealing with the same issue. But why don't you just tell us first of all about the George W. Davis Senior Residence, how long it's been around, the renovation that has occurred. Just tell us sort of the history of the place and who's lived there in the past.
Well, this is Kathy Davis. I'm the executive director of Bayview Hunters Point Senior Services, and Dr. George Davis was our executive director for over 30 years. So the senior housing that's being built is built in his memory and in his name. He wanted to see ways for seniors to age in place in their community. So we are finally, after 20 years of him having the vision, able to produce 120 units of really affordable senior housing in San Francisco in Bayview Hunters Point. So it's been a long, long struggle with the city. We have redevelopment dollars in there. We have some rebuild money from Alice Griffith in there. We have tax credits in there. There's a lot of support to build the housing. And now we're at the point where we have to figure out who gets to live in it. And that actually starts October 1st to 28th. And I'll have Felicia explain more of those details. But for us to have this housing finally is kind of bittersweet, because finally it's here. And yet with all the gentrification, all the changes in the neighborhood, and the lack of a neighborhood preference for this housing, it's kind of scary about opening it up to the, how many people are going to be really going to be able to live there. And can we get people from the neighborhood in there? And our best bet is our certificate of preference program, where people who were removed when you were talking about back in the Western Addition in Bayview in the 60s and 70s have a certificate of preference to come back. That's our best hope to try to get some more neighborhood people into that housing.
Now, there wasn't a center before. This was something that is brand new.
Well, our agency has been around for 44 years.
Okay.
But we have the Dr. George Davis Senior Center, and that's actually moving into the same building as the senior residence.
Got
but
it.
The senior building is new.
How did this get? I mean, you said it was a dream of George Davis. How much did it take, to just get this thing off the ground and get it moving? I mean, was there a community groundswell? Was there, who was advocating for this? I guess was it the neighbors in the community, or how did it happen?
Him. He had the patience of Job, because he never stopped talking about it, and he always enrolled people to help him with it. And he got the project area committee and city officials, and he just kept enrolling people, got the community behind him, the seniors behind him. And when he passed, it was like, we have to do this, because he really pushed for this. And before he died, he knew the land was going to be built on. But really, it was his incredible patience and not quitting, despite all the odds and all the naysayers and all the people who say you can't do this, that allowed us to push it forward to actually happen now.
What's I guess you won't, it's obvious what the need is, but just say it anyway. Just save the obvious. Obviously, there is a need for senior housing. You heard what's going on in Richmond and Contra Costa County. But and if I heard something that sounded really strange when they said the rent for a 2-bedroom place, or what did they say, like,
was $1,600.
Now that's probably double that in the city, easy.
Oh, easy.
Maybe 3 times that in the city. So,
yeah, I thought that was cheap. I'm like, wow.
by standards in San Francisco, you're absolutely right. So, just talk a little about the need for senior housing. I mean, it should be obvious, but I mean, you're closer to it than we are.
We are. I have never seen so many homeless seniors. It is so sad to see how many people are couch surfing, living in their cars, living in the street, trying to stay with their kids as best they can in substandard conditions, crowded, you name it. People are really trying to survive in San Francisco. And we have so many people that need this housing. I can't even begin to tell you the need is tremendous. And because of the gentrification in the neighborhood, and then we had the foreclosure crisis before that, people lost their homes already, and people have not really recovered from the recovery. So we are kind of building on top of that by now having the entire neighborhood becoming gentrified by what's going on in San Francisco, and Bayview is hot property to come and buy something a little bit cheaper and fix it up. So we have seniors who are losing their homes, people who are renting who are not able to find anything when the landlord raises their rent, people with Section 8 vouchers who can't find anything in the city, not even in Bayview, and it just keeps building. It's really a lot of pressure on these seniors.
So let's delve into that a little bit. I mean, Bayview has been an African-American area for God knows what. Well, let's go back to, World War II when black folks started moving in because of the shipyard. It's changed, and it's changing, and it's continuing to change. There must be a huge concern on your part and everybody's part, that the folks that have lived there for a long time and are undergoing those radical changes, you know, aren't on any kind of. Is there a preference list? Is there something that allows them, you know, somehow to, right of first choice or something like that to get into the senior center? Or how does that work?
No, there are no neighborhood preferences. The Board of Supervisors is considering something, but it won't apply to our building. But let me give that one to Felicia because she was born and raised in Bayview Hunters Point.
Okay, Felicia, it's yours.
Well, what we have is the certificate of preference, which will allow a individual who was displaced, as you said, between 1960, 1970s, West Edition, and in Bayview Hunters Point, to gain their certificate of preference, which gives them first preference gives them first access to be interviewed for housing.
Oh.
Yes. Usually when you open up a wait list, there's, in San Francisco, you get at least maybe 3,000 applicants. But if you're a certificate of preference holder, they separate your number, and you get to get called in first, get interviewed first, get screened. And then there's other resources connected to being a certificate of preference holder. They have first-time home buyer programs. But with that preference, it allows you to essentially jump the wait list. So your number could be 2,499, but if you're a certificate of preference holder, you're going to be entered into a lottery with just preference holders outside of the 3,000 people. So it allows you to be screened first.
So it doesn't take rocket science or this PhD I got to get. You want to be a certificate of preference holder.
Yes, you did.
Now say the criteria for that again, because I wrote it down, but I didn't get the criteria. Say the criteria for being a certificate of preference holder one more time.
That you were displaced through the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency in the 1960s and 1970s. Like, around 65 to 75 in that 10-year span, whether it was in Western Addition or in Bayview, but you were displaced through the Redevelopment Agency, not the San Francisco Housing Authority, but the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency.
So those are folks maybe who've had their, their houses torn down or bulldozed, and they had to sell them because there was an act of, we're going to build something else here, so you got to go. So sell us your house, and we're going to tear it down. That sounds like displacement to me.
Well,
yes.
People who were renting as well, and there were 30,000 people who were removed. That's a lot of people.
Wow.
That's why people in Western Addition feel how they feel about redevelopment.
Yeah, I know. I saw a whole documentary on it. But wow. So if they were displaced at that time, they are eligible for a certificate of preference. What about longtime folks who have lived in the Bayview for years and just through this process moved to Antioch, or which one? A lot of them did, that, or because of the violence that's going on, got out of there. Are they on? Is there any preference for them?
There's one for an Alice. If anyone lived in Alice Griffiths, also known as Double Rock, from 2010 on, and they left, they still have the right to return into new housing, including the senior housing. So there might be a narrow margin of people who fit that. But if there's anybody out there, call us. And then the other thing is, I've been fighting really hard to try to get a neighborhood preference for Bayview Hunters Point with the city, and we haven't succeeded with that. There's some legislation going up at the end of October that's going to give some form of neighborhood preferences, but not specifically for Bayview yet. But I'm really fighting that fight. It's disappointing to me because I've been bringing it to the city for quite some time, yet our building is leasing up, and there is no preferences for Bayview Hunters Point. And I'm shouting to the rooftops, there should be one.
Yeah, that's, I think anybody, especially if you've been through this once, in any city, and certainly those in San Francisco have been through it with the Fillmore.
But here's one thing I want to point out. Even if you're in Antioch, get on the list, because there may be displacement preferences coming down the pike. There could be Bayview preferences. Just get on that list because those lists don't open up again. We have October 1st to the 28th to get on this list. And then 5 years from now, you'll be driving by that building and say, gee, I'd like to get in there. And if you're not on that list, you won't be considered. So I tell everybody, get on there. We need to show that there's a lot of African Americans that want to get on the list, just like other groups get on these lists. African Americans need to get on these lists. So I'm really encouraging everybody to do that.
Yes, go right ahead.
I just wanted to point out that with the certificate of preference holders, it initially was said that if you were a leaseholder, so when you were the leaseholder and your name appeared on the lease, but if you were the children of people who were leaseholders and your name was also on the lease, then you also are eligible for a certificate of preference. And if you were not on the lease, perhaps maybe you lived with your aunt or your grandmother in the Western Addition or right, and you went to school, John Adams, John Sweat, and your transcript could show that that was your address, although you may not have been on the lease, because in the 60s and 70s, predominantly in African-American cultures, when we had to care for our grandchildren and our nieces and nephews, we didn't add them to the lease. We just took them in and took them. But if medical records and utility bills and educational records show that you live there, then we can petition the mayor's office of housing with different documentation verifying that you lived in that unit or resided at that address, then you too can also become a certificate of preference holder. So we always telling people, you may have lived there, but maybe it wasn't your parents, maybe it was your grandmother, maybe you weren't on the lease. If you remember where you went to school, we're able to go to the Department of Education, to Mount Zion, to UC Hospital, to John Adams College, and pull transcripts records to help people verify that they lived at those residencies in order to obtain their certificate of preference.
Well, it seems that the watchword is to err on the side of caution. I mean, if you don't fit the criteria, but you have nothing to lose to see if you are remotely close to the criteria. So I would, just like you, urge folks to see if they can qualify for a certificate of preference. And it's interesting, the word is getting out. Somebody actually sent me an email about it. And this is the state here. Anything I read here, if it's not correct, please tell me. The name of the new senior building is the George W. Davis Senior Housing Residence at 1751 Carroll Street in San Francisco. That's Carroll and Yosemite, I believe. Carroll and 3rd, I'm sorry. Okay. Applications open October 1st through the 28th, 1 through 28, 2015. You can apply online at the SF Housing Authority website. Seniors 60. Because we all got, this should hit everybody. Everybody's got parents. Everybody's got grandparents. Some got great-grandparents, And, senior housing, I mean, we moved my grandmother into a senior housing complex in Los Angeles. Had to get her away from the hood, moved over into Inglewood. It was a big deal to have her in a place that we didn't have to worry about her because she was living by herself. Seniors 60 years and up with incomes. There's an income, I don't know if I need to read this, But that's, I'm not even going to get into that. You might want to say that. But the places sound great. 117 one-bedrooms, 3 two-bedroom caregiver units. You must be 62. I guess it's 62 to move in. SF Housing Authority site. And we talked about the preferences. Information application assistance available at Bayview Senior Connections, 5600 3rd Street. I'm going so fast, 415-647-5353. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. If anybody knows our number, and our number here is 800-765-3437, you call our office. You call our office at Alive and Free Omega Boys Club. I'll have this information from our secretary, our admin person. So you don't have to write all this down now. But if you call our office, you can call us and we'll pass the word on about this. I just in bold, please spread the word on this opportunity. The rental building and new 15,000 square foot senior center is gorgeous, even now. Does that say it all? Or you want to add anything else?
I just want to encourage young people out there to help their mamas, grandpas, aunts, and uncles to go online, because a lot of seniors do not go online on a regular basis, and it is an only online application. So that's new for the city, for us, and so we're doing everything to have the village help the seniors get their applications in.
You know, to me, I really want to do this because this is an area that is undergoing the redevelopment / gentrification. And I know there's a lot of housing being built out there. I don't know if any is really ready. And I know there's a lot of programs out there trying to make the residents who are currently there credit ready and credit worthy to be able to get both market rate housing and reduced rate housing. But to me, this is the first one that's come under that whole, in this whole time. So I want to see how this one goes. It's very important for me and probably for the rest of us who are concerned about gentrification in the city of San Francisco to see how this goes. So I'm glad we're able to do it. I'm glad we're able to get the word out, and I'm glad we'll be able to tell folks. And more importantly, I'm glad that you two are like serious about it because, especially people who've lived there for a long time like you, Mr. I think it's just, you got to be feeling this.
Dr. Marshall, our agency also helps to get residents get rent ready. We do a workshop. They can call 415-647-5353, where we educate our community on the affordable housing application process so that they know what landlords do to deny your application without looking at your race, your creed, your sex, your color. Just because San Francisco gets an overwhelming amount of applications, there's these small processes that you can go through. So we like to educate our community, not just around housing opportunities, but how to complete housing applications.
This is tough to see. Is going on all over America. I often make the joke. I made it to a couple of mayors that I'm a city appointee a bunch of things. I have to say, man, one day I'm gonna be the last black man in the city of San Francisco. The way this thing is going, and it really is tough to see. There are forces operating that are inevitable, and I guess all you can do is try and hang on, try and do what you can to keep the flavor. And I'm gonna use that. I think that's a good word of these cities: Oakland, San Francisco, Richmond, and, any area. St. Louis, where I grew up. I was in Los Angeles yesterday, and that whole place is changing as best you can. So I really appreciate both of you doing that. And one thing, when you sell your house, land is one thing you gotta hang on to. So. I really appreciate it. We'll do what we can. Thanks for coming on tonight. Lady Stella, you got anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and the support that you have available for the community, because it's so necessary. It's so important. I mean, I can't imagine being a senior and then having to live out of my car, so this kind of support is priceless.
Or pay the rents that you pay in the city of San Francisco or any place for that matter. Okay, we gotta get out.
It's a little slice of hope. We're bringing a piece of hope back to Bay.
Absolutely,
you got it. Thank both of you. All right, we gotta get out of here. Q's, give me the wrap up sign. I will make sure that anybody that calls our office gets this information. And good luck. It begins October 1st. We'll stay in touch. All righty. Thank you. Okay, live and free radio, hour number 2. Whoa, that was some, I'm just, And you think folks want to talk, but you really do. You think people do want to
I know
talk about gentrification.
People want to talk about gentrification. It's a huge topic. It's affecting
I'm going to give them a chance.
everyone in the Bay Area, whether you're new or transplant.
I was just going to cover this story and, move on to some. But if anybody wants to say anything about it, about gentrification in general and specific, your neighborhood, what you're seeing, the future, but give us a call. 800-765, that's how I gauged. 800-765-3437, 800-765-3437. I mentioned just me. I mean, really, I'm from, Los Angeles. I came up to the Bay Area, and it wasn't quite Chocolate City, but it was a whole lot of chocolate around here, And I remember the first time I went to Oakland, it was like, whoa, but it's like, whoa.
Yeah. I think people just need to educate themselves more on how real estate works. Because if you understand it, then, you won't be a victim and you could actually kind of capitalize on the opportunity. And I think that would actually help, more of us actually stay in our, our homes if you educate yourself on how real estate works.
Yeah.
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 So I think that's what's causing it. It's just a lack of education in that area.
You also got to have some money.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, but that's the thing. Well,
I want to buy in downtown Richmond right now because I know 10 years from now I might come up.
Well,
I would come up.
Yeah.
But I don't have no money to buy right now.
Save your money.
I guess I really want to know how people feel about it. And part of my reluctance to do this, to bring this up is, and I told myself, I like doing things I have answers for.
Yeah.
Violence, we got an answer for. History and culture, we got an answer for, right?
I mean, there is an answer to this. The answer is work together with your family, save money, and learn about real estate.
If you got the answer, then that's fine. I mean, I don't necessarily have an answer for the forces that are in the changing faces of these neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And look, everybody got the right and should live where they want to live. That's not the issue. The issue is it's just home ownership is such a big deal. And it's just amazing to me to when I go into places. When you go into West Oakland and you see folks walking dogs at 3:00 in the morning, you're like, what? It's just, I don't even know what to. I don't have a real. It's just, I don't know. I'm just blown away by it more than anything else. And I don't have. I mean, you have an answer.
I would say
I really don't have an answer.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I know a guy that I'm doing. I know a friend basically who just bought like 20 acres and plans to build a bunch of houses. He's just building capital right now.
Yeah.
So the thing is you buy low and you kind of, but you have to. It's him, his brother, and his two sisters. They all work together. They save their money and they invest. So I would say, I mean, of course, get an education, or I think that's the.
Well, your key point that I hear is, he's not doing it by himself.
Yeah, it's family.
People are doing it together.
Yeah.
Whether it's cooperative business, cooperative housing. I mean, because you can't beat an investor who's paying $800,000 cash for your house.
Well, it's not, okay, so it's not just one investor. These are actually groups of people. So it's not just like one person paying $800,000.
Yeah, but they got cash.
Yeah, and it's an investment group. If we all come together, we put up X amount of dollars, we probably could start doing the same thing.
Okay. So here's my question.
Yeah. Okay. There's still.
What do you say to that 73-year-old?
Yeah, that's a messed up situation. That's where.
That's what I mean. That's the answer. That's what I'm talking about.
That's not fair.
And what do you say if you live in East Oakland, or if you live in West Oakland, or you live in Bayview Hunters Point, and that's just places, if you live in, and you see these forces just happening, and you see everything change. It's good. I mean, I don't have an answer for that.
You say, welcome to Antioch, Elk Grove, or Pittsburgh. That's what you say.
But they don't. But yes, but they lament the fact that
it sucks.
It ain't.
It's terrible.
That's why it's hard for me to talk about it.
Yeah,
because
I
can't
as far
tell.
As
all I can do is try and preserve what's there, as this whole area is just transforming right in front of your eyes, and you're not there anymore. Yeah. I mean, you're not there anymore.
But that's how people feel about Richmond right now. I mean, Oakland's a different story because it's there. It already happened. Richmond is one of those cities where some people would say it's not happening, and others say, I can tell something's going on. These people wouldn't be here they wouldn't have been here 5 years ago. The rents are starting to creep up. I grew up here. I lived here in Richmond my whole life, and now I have to move.
800-765-3437, gentrification. I'm just curious as to your thoughts about it. It's happening everywhere. I want to know. That's something I haven't done before. We haven't done this on Street Soldiers ever, but it's upon us. Let's put it like that. Let's go line 2 and talk to Sharon. Is that it? Sharon,
Yes,
you're
it
on.
is.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Just talking about this.
Well, gentrification is not new.
Yeah.
My grandparents lived in San Francisco in the Fillmore district when they gentrified 30 plus years ago. But one of the things I wanted to bring up is a lot of this is education.
Okay.
I came from a family that really pushed home ownership and was like, you got to get you a stake. Why pay rent when you could you could pay the same amount? And truly, there are so many programs now out here to help people buy houses. They just have to change their focus. Don't go out and spend all of this money on clothes and stuff when you could take that same, because you could pay the same thing in a mortgage that you're paying for rent.
Mm-hmm.
I recently just repurchased in Oakland. I grew up in Oakland. My parents owned a house in Oakland. My father, probably about 8 years ago, walked away from his house and now cannot afford to get back into it. I recently moved him in with me, but I was intent on moving back to Oakland because I was like, I'm not going to give away my community. But one of the issues I've had that is really serious is the crime. A week after buying my house, there was a shooting right in front of my house. And I'm like, what the what?
Yeah.
I'm just like baffled. Like, are you serious? You live here, dude. And I really had to have a conversation with, the youngsters out there. I'm like, I understand you trying to get your hustle on and your grind on, but I'm also a homeowner. And when push comes to shove, I'm going to call the police.
Wow.
I don't want to. I want to be able to live peacefully in this neighborhood, and they respect me. But at the same time, if I had children, my son is grown. If I had children, I probably would have made a different choice.
See, and that's the catch-22 in it, right? You hit it right there. You want to live there, but you also concerned about your safety and the safety of your family. So, and that's the whole thing. A lot of the gentrification, there's the housing price. There's the price now, but it's spurred on by the very people, by your neighbors, right?
Right, right.
Because it's personal. It happened to me. I'm like, I ain't staying here. I got kids. I got a family. And then you bemoan the whole fact that, our own worst enemy and so many. The other thing I want to just hang on. What has spurred a lot of this on, and I'm sure you've seen this, is look, crack cocaine just did a whole bunch of bad things.
Oh, absolutely.
But one of the bad things it did was it messed up home ownership, because what happened with these folks would have these homes, and the grandparents of the homes, the parents of the homes. Sometimes they would leave the homes to the kids, and it would turn into a crack house, right?
Right.
And then somebody would come in and buy the house, and a lot of it happened just because of that. So,
or the sad part, even worse than that, they leave it to the kids and leave it equally to the kids, and there's one kid who's responsible and is willing to buy the rest of them out, and they're like, no, we're not selling it to you because we could get more.
Yeah.
And they're trying to give them a fair price for it, so nobody gets the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Your situation is so real time. And so what did homie number one, homie number two, what did they say to you? Or did they get it at all? Like, look.
Well, they kind of look at it as, I go back to kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They looking at their basic needs. I got to eat, I got to sleep. I got to have a roof over my head. If they're not there yet, they can't even get to the rest of the stuff. And one of the things I am realizing, I work in a government system where I'm trying to educate. We have to go in and educate younger, because one of the reasons that I feel the way I do is because it was passed on to me. So any young person that I come in contact with, I'm letting them know the bigger picture. when they get caught up in the system, I let them know, look, the system is designed to keep you in it. And they've already, once you get in the system, they've already written you off. So let me help you stay out of the system. Let me help you maintain this knowledge to go past just the basic stuff. Because many times we want to attack the systems, but I also remember when the Housing Authority wasn't as active as they were, it was ridiculous. I remember growing up by the Village, and it was crazy. It was crazy. And that kind of safety, a fear for your safety, is just out of pocket. And at some point, people have to stand up and take the neighborhoods back, because people don't, and it's interesting.
See, that's the real solution. That's the real solution. It is, honestly. Folks don't want to hear that, but that is it. You're right. Absolutely.
I went to a thing at not Skyline, but a Prison to Pipeline conversation last Saturday. And one of the things, a lady from up in the Oakland Hills, she had purchased her home, and she was like, I don't understand. Caucasian lady, and she truly was looking for answers. Like, she's there at a church on Sunday trying to figure out why these kids are graffitiing her sidewalk. And the people are trying to tell her, the facilitators are trying to tell her, well, maybe they feel like you don't belong. And coming from home ownership, this is my property.
That's right.
This is my land. I ain't got to tell them. And what the facilitators were trying to say, well, without these kids going to Skyline, then they wouldn't have the opportunity to get a better education. And what she told them is the people who live here don't send their kids to Skyline. And they actually wouldn't be opposed to the school closing. So people have to kind of listen to what the community is saying, because it is changing and it's not what it used to be. And you can't just, allow young people to not be accountable for their actions and be responsible. We can help them be part of the process.
800-765-3437. I'm curious. I mean, my curiosity's really been, what's that word I can never say? Piqued. Just to see people
like
are even
P-E-A-K only. It's P-I-C-Q-U-E.
even want to talk about it. Even want to talk about it.
Peak.
It always bothers me when folks want to talk about something that's happening all around them. Happening all around them, and where else are you going to talk about it? You can go another radio talk show, but they ain't going to talk about it. I think we talk about it. And not that we have answers, but that we can at least pose some questions. And although, Q says he's got at least some answers. So let's go to line 1 and talk to JJ. JJ, how you doing? Thanks for calling us, talking about this.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Marshall.
Good evening.
So I wanted to weigh in on gentrification, and also one thing, too, about the certificate of preference. So in order for you to receive a certificate of preference, you'd have to be the primary person on the lease. So it doesn't mean that your co-head nor any of your children are applicable. So if your children have already reached the age of 18, it wouldn't be applicable towards any other housing that San Francisco is building. And if San Francisco is building any new housing, certificate of preference is first off the first ones to go get placed either through any of these nonprofits, whether it be Mercy Housing or Bridge Housing, that's being built along the city, and also any of these other below market rates buildings that they're building. Only 30% of the buildings are dedicated towards low-income families.
Yeah, and I didn't know the exact percentage. I know market rate housing will dominate, and so I guess you're saying 30%, which is. Look,
yeah, so let's just say it's a 300 unit
I'll
building.
take it. I'd like more, but I'll take 30%.
Yeah. So my thing is that even though there's affordable housing being built, most people who've lived in any of these neighborhoods, obviously we've seen gentrification in the Fillmore area. We've seen gentrification in the Mission neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we now see, a big influx of gentrification along 3rd and the Bayview.
Yeah.
So what's going on right now is people need to go link up with their neighbors, sign petitions, because this is the thing. With the city and Housing Authority in particular, they're moving all the things from Housing Authority, all the tenants from Housing Authority, and they're transferring over them to nonprofits. Those nonprofits then dictate who comes in. So if you are on a fixed income, because it used to be that you were able to get onto public housing and be on GA, making $420 a month off that.
Right.
But that's not even the case no more. Even if you were disabled and collecting Social Security or Social Security disability, it's not even applicable. So that's why for most people, they do tend to move out towards, outer Contra Costa, like Antioch, Pittsburgh. And it's really tough for people of color because you think about it, there is a social economical disparity. The jobs are not there for people of color, and everybody has to work in the cities.
Is Dre still on? Dre, let me get, yeah. Uh-oh. Dre?
Hello? Yeah.
What's up, Dre?
You've been listening to this whole thing, man, and I wasn't sure folks would actually, this is a different kind of subject for us. Although it's community and we're a community radio program, I think it's a wonderful thing. And just based on what you've heard, you got any thoughts on it?
Man, I actually have a whole lot of thoughts, but knowing that I only have a limited amount of time, I'll just say...
You got about 3.5 minutes. Go ahead.
The first thing I want to say, education and all that stuff has its place within this, but we got to start with the political landscape of those who are making these decisions. If we do not get out and vote these people out of office who are putting these zoning laws and who are making these unfair practices the way that they go about doing things, then we will never get any traction. The reason why they keep making the decisions that they make is because they're not afraid of community backlash, because we normally go to the meetings. We normally go to the city supervisor meetings, and we shout and we scream and we yell. But we do not organize any kind of voting campaign or have any direct, should I say, focus where the message is a unified one saying, if you don't provide X, Y, and Z, if you don't redo this, that, and the other that's directly affecting you, I don't care if a gorilla is sitting in that chair next year. You will not be sitting there. And until they feel the political pressure of the community, they're not going to make any decisions. They make decisions based on economics, and they make decisions based on the people who will come out and vote. If we do not take that same stance, then we will be forever spinning our wheels and asking people to do something for us, and we don't have the power to make it happen for ourselves. The other piece is, and you have alluded to this earlier, we have to get into those positions that make those decisions and make those votes, so that we can care about our own. If they have no, why would they care about somebody who they're not vested in the first place? We're asking the wrong people to do the right thing. If you don't have the right people to do the right thing, then it doesn't matter what you say, what you scream, what you holler. So, yeah, there's a ton of programs out there. Yeah, there's a ton of education that's out there. Yeah, there are strategies that we can use to pull ourselves together to go out as a collaborate to purchase land, purchase buildings, and to take our time. We got all this to make the banks and or should I say the resources to pull everything together. But if you got people who can literally set a law against you making a bank, or set a law to keep you from buying property, or to keep you from getting in there, then it doesn't matter what you come up with to counteract the policies that go on. You have to change the policies, or you have to make the people who change the policies change the policy.
You know, Jay, the big thing for me, and this is the hardest thing for me, even when any subject we do, it's all about consciousness. And there's so much about, and this is why I know I'm always hard on, entertainment and athletes, is there's no consciousness in any of that stuff, right? I'll never forget the hyphy movement, which is, go dumb and go stupid. Well, that's the last thing you need to be, is dumb and stupid. That's the craziest thing in the world. And I would get upset that even give a message, even in fun or in jest or in seriousness. You can't give these young people messages. Look, how many times have you and I gone to speak to young people, and their administrators, the teachers said, they want to listen to you. We got to entertain them. No. And then when we start talking, they don't give the kids credit. They don't give the kids credit. And then they're like, that consciousness has to be put in them and awakened. There's no entertainers in prison. We go in and they're talking. They conscious now because they in jail. And so that's the tough thing for me is the stuff we talk about. We got a couple hours on the radio and there's, a few of us. The consciousness about all this stuff is so important to their entire life, to their family's life, all of this stuff. And you can't do any of this stuff that you and I are talking about, or we're talking about here, unless you are conscious. And that's what makes me sad. These processes that swirl around on you because you're not conscious.
Well, and you're exactly right. And the thing that makes me sad is that even though you could say that the system is unfair and it's slanted, it's still a system in which you can progress in and you can make a difference in and a change and live within and prosper if you know what to do, how to do it, and you know the system. But the way the messages are given to our people is fight the system, live outside the system, and don't worry about it because you're going to die anyway. And instead of learn it and live within it, not saying that it's going to be fair all the time. Not saying that.
Well, it's never been fair. It's always been slanted. You didn't have to say that. That's the way it's conceived from day one.
Right.
But consciousness is what gets you. It gets you to combat it and move forward.
Yeah. And if we don't teach our young people, and that's been something that a lot of people have said, if we don't pass this down and send this as a message to our young people, then they're going to be further detached from even the knowledge base of what they can do in terms of home ownership.
The topic tonight is an eye-opening one indeed. It concerns a precious population, senior citizens and their housing. Gentrification is sometimes known as redevelopment, displacing seniors and others while raising rent. At a town hall meeting full of walkers and canes, where even affordable housing is increasing. Seniors who have lost their homes, fixed incomes decreased, safety is being compromised, no security, all of which is dehumanizing. Then we heard from Kathy Davis and Felicia Thibodeau with the George W. Davis Senior Center and units that are affordable. Certificates of Preference program is available for you if between 1960 and 1970 displacement by San Francisco redevelopment happened to you. Yes, market rate housing does dominate, with 30% of affordable housing for low income that's at stake. There's so much more one needs to know and see. So when it comes to gentrification, redevelopment, education is the key. What programs are available? What is equitable and fair? Can we get these issues on the ballot? And remember our dear seniors. What's happening in our cities is destructive and painful to see. So let's band together, build our communities up, and while doing that, stay alive and free. This is Lady Estelle asking you to consider this.